So thus far, Greg has encouraged us to sell all our possessions, give it to the poor, follow Jesus, and incurring debt, or like being unable to pay our debts. I'm just kidding, of course, but this is pretty radical, and I think I mentioned last time there's a scandal involved here, and the scandal is that this is just my perspective on it.
Sure.
So first of all, there's a scandal of faith, of trusting God.
Right.
And that's hard enough to get your mind around.
Right.
But then you believe, okay, if I trust God, then he will come through. Like, for instance, if I trust God with my finances, maybe I'll have, just enough, but I won't be in debt.
Right.
And you're saying it might be possible to transition into this kingdom economy and be in debt and be unable to pay.
Yes. That is scandalous.
That is scandalous.
Because I think the conservative religious thinking is, look, we have an obligation to pay our bills.
Absolutely.
And God would never want us to short anyone. Therefore, we must find, however it's possible, to get income, to have a job, to have a career to satisfy that. Because otherwise, we're not good Christians and we're bums.
That's a great way to put it. I was going to say something similar to that.
Well, who's a bum around here?
That's right.
I guess we are. Because
I would say, just looking at our physical appearance, I would probably be more prone to bumness than you. You're a little more, a little better put together.
Another word for that would be deadbeat.
Deadbeat. Sure.
Deadbeat.
Sure.
You're a deadbeat if you don't pay your bills.
Right.
Especially on time.
Especially on time.
But if God said, I'm putting you through this for a reason, and didn't give you the resources to pay the bills, then what do? You either are a liar and crazy and you're not following God, you're just, you're in some cult or something.
Sure.
Or you actually are following God, it's exactly where he wants you to be, and you're scratching your head, why would you ever want me to be in this terrible position?
Right.
And it comes to the heart. It's just like with the Israelites when they were tested in the desert. They were given manna from heaven that their parents didn't know.
Okay.
They were coming out of slavery and all they had was the manna. Manna's not great to eat, right? It's really rough for a while. You can't pay the bills with manna. I'm just saying. But you could survive with the manna.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So what it really showed me is that God might be saying, we trust ourselves and we trust our money more than we're willing to admit. Americans.
Okay.
Do you trust your money and do you trust yourselves more than you're willing to admit?
Right.
You have these great attributes, which I've put in you, of hard work, of a good ethic of working, of entrepreneurialism, of excellence and innovation and all these things. And you're the wealthiest country, arguably, that's ever lived.
Sure.
But does that mean we're perfectly in line with God's will?
Right.
And I think the answer is we're not. And so if we're not, then how do we separate? And if we separate, that's traumatic.
Right.
And when we're in the trauma of how do I pay my bills, and God purposely is causing us to understand, okay, I'm short here, the spreadsheet doesn't add, what do I do?
What do I do?
And that is where we reinvent our faith, right? Because we have to. We have to say, okay, I've never been here before, but God, you put me here. You're going to get me out of this.
Sure.
Show me the escape path. And what are you teaching me through this escape path? And what you'll find, which is what I found, is God opens up the path.
Right.
He makes a miracle.
He makes a way.
It may not be the check we wanted, right? So when we trust God radically with this kind of faith, I mean, my expectation was that I'm a finance guy. So that just means as soon as I really step into it with the trust, then the big checks will come.
The monies are going to be
the
money's
big
gonna
checks
be
will
there. Right.
show up because we've proven and demonstrated, we went to our Mount Moriah, that we were willing to put the hatchet down on our own son, our own dream, and our own promise.
Sure.
And why wouldn't God come through?
Right.
He's a last minute God.
So in my faith journey, just to kind of spell this out, I had a specific promise from the Lord. This phrase that he would provide for me and support me He gave it to me 3 times, and I said, I believe you. And then he gave me this phrase, this is your righteousness. So kind of an Abrahamic kind of a promise that he would provide for me, support me. The next day, after getting this promise, was the first day I was ever in debt.
I thought that's when you got the $1 million.
Well, the $1 million
Oh,
came
you never
later.
got the $1 million.
That was when I came.
You want the $1 million.
That's when I came over to your house and was, stealing some of your statuary. That's how I got the $1 million.
But instead, you got this great promise.
I got this great promise.
With a credit card?
And I had a credit, right, because I used my credit card, the way you're supposed to. I always paid it off every month.
Like I did, yeah.
And instead, this next day, July 1st, 2008, is the first day I've ever been in debt. And I'm like, I get this promise last night. I believed the Bible before. I believed that God provided, I never doubted that.
Right.
But now I get this promise specifically, and the next day I'm in debt. And I was upset. I was angry with God. Because I was like, why did you say this thing to me just in order to put me in this situation? Right. And the stories I had read about provision always had a happy ending. Immediately.
Immediately.
It was never like
instant gratification.
Right. It was like, okay, the orphanage was out of food and we prayed and food came. Which is an awesome story, right?
It is, yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't come like that. Right. And it's more of a drawn out process. Now, I'm no longer in that debt at this time, but it was a long drawn out process over several years where I was offended with God and angry with God. For, I follow you. It's like, I'm stupid enough to say yes to you. And then you hit me with a stick. That's what I felt like. That was my heart attitude to God, which was wrong.
Right.
It was the wrong attitude, but that was my attitude. Right. So that's something that I don't think that a lot of people maybe have thought about or are aware of, is that sometimes when you step out in faith,
yes,
ouch.
It can be painful. And why? Because there's something in us that God's trying to take out of us.
Ooh.
Something in us. So that can be a process. It's like a surgeon doing his work.
I don't like processes, Greg. Can we get back to the incremental nice steps?
Well, that's just the thing. Like, if you want to enter into God's economy and you want to have financial faith and you want to come into financial freedom, it is a process.
Okay.
The Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. If we're like that, first step one is to come into our wilderness testing. And it's a process. They could have been into the promised land quicker.
Right.
But it took 40 years.
Oh.
It took a whole new generation with a fresh attitude towards God.
I thought there was going to be some encouragement in this message here. This is hurting me.
The pain that you felt, that I felt, is like an extraction process. We're being the dross is being extracted from us. You know the scriptures that talk about the refiner's fire?
Yes.
And the Laodicean church
I don't like
lukewarm.
That. Yeah.
You say you're rich, but you're really poor. So we could have all the money in the world, but be really poor.
Right.
Spiritually.
I always liked that scripture, but when it was about somebody else, not me.
Yeah. Me too. But when you're in the furnace, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we think of that story as like, hey, Jesus came in and rescued them.
That was awesome. That was a cool story.
2 seconds, boom, they're gone. They don't even smell like smoke.
I know.
But if it's the desert, the desert could be a while.
The desert could be a while.
And you might have to live on the manna for a while.
Right.
It's not that tasty after a while, but it's enough to get you through.
It wears on you.
And you know what God kept saying to the Israelites and is saying to us? I have put you through this process to test you, to test your heart, that you would no longer turn back and serve the gods of Egypt any longer.
Right.
Because before I bring you to the promised land and bring you into your promises, Greg or whomever, church, whomever, the promises of God, where it's going to be great. There's going to be rich vineyards and wonderful flowing honey and milk and
honey
all these
pots.
great things. Yeah.
Lamb chops.
That'll be there. God's good. Heaven's good.
Right.
Heaven's going to come to the earth. It's all good in the end, but to be prepared for that, we have to have the right heart. And I think that we each need to go through whatever transformation process God would take us through, which includes this financial transformation, to trust in Him And one of the things that was said to the Israelites as both a warning before they went into the promised land and then a rebuke later was, do not trust in yourself and do not trust in your wealth. And then say, aha, look what I did with my own hands and look at this wealth that I've created for myself.
Right.
That's pride, control, and money. And God was saying to the Israelites, I tested you in the desert so you wouldn't be like that any longer.
Right.
And that when you go into the promised land, you aren't like that. But I'm warning you, the temptation's going to be there to revert to that, and you'll be in this wonderful land and you'll say, look at what my hands have done. Look at my wealth. Isn't this great? What a great kingdom I've created.
Right.
And forget about God.
Right.
So
forget that it's the grace of God that brought you there.
that's this whole financial thing. Like, everyone would like for the markets to go up and all of our financial futures to be secure, the Social Security checks to keep coming, the government checks to keep coming, the retirement checks to keep coming, the economy to keep going, the markets to create this wealth for me and my family. But if we forget about God and have all that and lose our soul, was it worth it?
Maybe for me, but not you.
All right.
Let's talk about this in the next segment.